Good afternoon. I'm Doug Boynton. Education matters to everyone. Today we continue our discussion with regional school superintendents about the state of education today and the challenges teachers face in the classroom. Our in-studio guest is Dr. Lisa Martin, who heads the Northampton County Schools. What is it like to teach on Virginia's Eastern Shore? Like other divisions, attracting and keeping teachers is an ongoing problem, and Northampton started the year with a shortage. Also, the large migrant population of the region creates unique challenges. And the division recently broke ground on a new middle and high school facility. What are the politics of convincing the public to invest in school infrastructure? We'll tackle these and other issues and take your calls. Education Matters is next, right after this local, regional, and national news from NPR and the WHRO newsroom. Good afternoon and welcome to Education Matters. I'm Doug Boynton. Virginia's Eastern Shore is a ride across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, a 17.5-mile trek across the mouth of the bay. To many Southside locals, the shore can seem like another state. However, school officials there face many of the same challenges that divisions here in Hampton Roads face: chronic absenteeism, teacher shortages, and learning loss due to the pandemic. The shore also has a large migrant population that is the backbone of its agricultural community, and with that, a large student population where English is not spoken at home. Dr. Lisa Martin is the superintendent of the Northampton County Schools. She was appointed in January of 2023 after serving as an associate superintendent and the interim superintendent. Dr. Martin, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for letting me be here this afternoon.
We're glad you're here. If you have questions or comments for Dr. Martin, the phone numbers are 800-940-2240 or 757-440-2665. Let's start with a little bit about you. If we get into a time machine and go back to that moment when you thought, I think I want to make education my career, what did that moment look like?
That moment looked like I was in the nursing program at a community college and fell in love with science, and fell in love with science when I was in high school, when my anatomy physiology teacher, Mama R, introduced us to all sorts of wonderful features of the life cycle and of organisms, and even allowed us to really do some great experimentation while we were in the lab. And I just said, well, I like this. However, my passion was being able to share it with others. And seeing that light bulb go off, see that excitement happen to really make science come to life, because it's all around us. And it's going to make a difference in everything that we do. And so it allowed me to shift my career and move into education, and then by getting a degree in biology, and then moving over in that sense, and then teaching, and then working in my classrooms, and truly making education a wonderful experience for all of our students.
So your first teaching experience was where?
My first teaching experience was in Orlando, Florida. I was working in the Orange County school system, and I was teaching high school science at that moment in time.
So what did the path look like that led from there to superintendent of Northampton County Schools?
Oh, goodness. I have been up and down the Eastern Shore in terms of the United States, not just the Eastern Shore here. I was able to, being brought up in a military family, we moved frequently. I went to school at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Went back to Florida, got position in teaching down in Florida, moved to a smaller division, and Orange County is a very large division with very large high schools. Moved into a smaller division where I was able to teach and to coach and make a difference and really connect to my students. I was afforded the opportunity to get my doctorate in Richmond. So I left Florida, moved to Richmond, and from there finished my PhD there and started working in Portsmouth City Schools as an assistant principal. Unfortunately, Portsmouth was going through some decline in enrollment at that time. So again, it was one of those, the last one in is the first one out in school systems. And so I moved to Stafford County, where again, as an assistant principal there, worked. And it was a growing, just booming school system there, and went from 3 high schools to 4 high schools to 5 high schools, and now they're building number 6. So I was able to move up through the ranks in Stafford County, and from the assistant principalship to opening a brand new high school, looking at construction and being on the grounds when there was a school with no students at that time, and then moving up into a central office. I did leave Virginia for a short period of time due to some family medical situations. I went home. The only daughter in the family went home to take care of my parents. And after I did my southern tour, as my other half would call it, I came back to Virginia, because Virginia truly is a home spot for me, and came back and moved into the Virginia Department of Education, and then was blessed with an opportunity to work out on the Eastern Shore.
The newspaper article indicated you and your husband were looking at retiring there.
He is a little bit ahead of me in terms of years of service. He's in his 40th year in education, and so he is looking to retire in June. And so we started having those conversations. I was commuting to Richmond, he was commuting north, and it was one of those, so where do you want to retire to? And his comment was anywhere but Northern Virginia. He was tired of the traffic and the challenges of the roadways. And I said, well, give me a little bit more. With someone who has a license plate that says FIISH, please don't judge on the spelling. But again, it's one of those, I knew we needed to be near the water. We needed to be somewhere where he could connect back. But even more for him, Northampton was a special spot because it was his first job offer. Fresh out of college, fresh out of the University of Richmond. He interviewed here and fell in love with Northampton. And he said, well, if you ever get an opportunity on the Eastern Shore, I'm all in. And so at the Department of Ed, I started looking, and an opportunity opened up in Northampton, and I applied, and I was very blessed and fortunate to be offered the position of the Associate Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. And then the superintendency opened up, and it was one of those it was a great opportunity for us to continue that movement in the school division forward. And so in January, I became the superintendent.
So we've often said on this program that the superintendent is like the CEO of a corporation, that everybody reports to you.
Yes, sir.
Superintendents can be generalists and have a little bit to do with every part of the organization. Tell us about the Northampton School District.
Well, it's a wonderful school division. I'm very, very blessed. We are a small school division. I have been in large divisions. I was actually the chief academic officer in the 3rd largest division in Georgia at one period of time. So I've been large and medium size, and now I'm really blessed to be in a small school division. We have 2 elementary schools. Both of our schools are Title I elementary schools.
What does that mean?
That means that those are majority of our students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. But Northampton's even more. We are a community eligibility program to school division, so that we offer free breakfast and lunch to all of our students. But Title I schools typically mean that those students have more financial needs, and so we recognize those needs, and so we're going to make sure that those needs are met at the schoolhouse versus waiting for someone else to take care of them. So we have 2 elementary schools. We have 1 middle school and 1 high school, and our middle school, high school currently sit in the same complex. So it's literally a hallway within our high school complex that serves our 7th and 8th graders, because because of the size and the age of our building, we still have to house our 6th graders back at the elementary schools. And so we're looking forward to future construction that's going to be going on in our school division, where we're going to be able to provide a true middle school experience for our middle schoolers. But back to your question about the Title I, our middle school will be becoming a Title I school next year, because again, as our students move up the needs of our families, we recognize that just because you change a grade doesn't change the economic need within the household. So we're going to make sure that those needs are there, which means we're looking at smaller class sizes, we're looking at additional resources, we're making sure that students have all that they need, including tutoring programs after school, looking at summer programs that they're going to be taken care of so we can address all their learning needs.
Students that come from impoverished families, that's a challenge not only for the instructional staff, but for the kids themselves.
Absolutely. And part of what we want to do is we want to make sure that it is not a roadblock, it's not a barrier to their opportunities, and we're not going to hold them back to doing whatever they are so interested in within our schools. So we have a wonderful children's closet within our schools that our community, and again, this is a huge shout out to the Northampton community because they are so willing to give to our schools. They are a part of and a vital partner with our schools. But we have children's closets within all of our schools, all 4, middle school, elementary, and high school, where if students have needs, we're able to provide those needs for our students in terms of clothing, in terms of books, in terms of instructional resources. We wrote a grant last year for Souls for Souls, and where we were able to bring in 500 pairs of shoes. So we have brand new name brand shoes and 1,000 pair of socks that we put into from preschool all the way up to high school sizes. We were able to put into our children's closet. So if someone is in need, we are able to take care of it for our students.
Our numbers, if you have comments or questions, 800-940-2240 or 757-440-2665. How much, and we'll probably talk about this at some length, but all over the pandemic played a real issue. It was a real issue for students who fell behind in reading, in math, and in other areas. How much of an impact was that in Northampton?
I think it was a significant impact in Northampton because just geographically, not even to this day, not all of our homes have internet capability. Because if you're out on a neck, out towards the water, right, it doesn't run out there. And so you're looking at how are they able to get that instruction and how are they going to get that personalized instruction. And in some of our instances, our parents are working, they're doing their very best, but they may not understand the science of reading. They may not understand phonics and phonemic awareness. And so how do we teach that to our babies in order to make sure that they are prepped and ready to move on when they become on grade level? So we're pulling together. We have tutoring programs after school in all of our levels, our elementary schools, our middle schools, and high schools. We're looking at smaller class sizes right now to ensure that our students are getting more one-on-one instruction. We have instructional aides in all of our classrooms on K through 2, and then 3 and 4 share an instructional aid, and 5 and 6 and share an instructional aid as well. Again, that allows us to do small group work with our students and look what we can do to close those learning gaps. We've also been very, very blessed in that with our resources that we've hired an additional reading specialist. So we now have a reading specialist, or will have next year, one in each one of our elementary schools and in our middle school. Again, we know that there's a learning gap. We need to build those skills and those resources for our students, because not only do we need to teach them, they need to learn how to read, but they need to read to learn as well. And so we need to make sure they have those coping skills to be successful.
Was the pandemic relief funds that came from the state and from the federal government, was that any help in bringing in tutors and so forth?
Absolutely. And we're still using, because we have a little bit of our pandemic relief funds left through September 30th, but we were able to bring in some resources and some support mechanisms in order to put those resources in place, those instructional resources, those classroom resources. Since I've come in, one of the things that we're doing is we know that those funds are going to sunset. And so we've been looking at what can we do to pull them into, what can we look at on our local budget, and what can we do to move those positions to where they're not being funded through federal, but they become a part of our monies, and what can we do to look at other federal resources in order to support those as well.
So well, we'll talk about it in a moment. We need to take a break.
Sorry.
The numbers to call. No, it's okay. It's the numbers to call, 800-940-2240, 757-440-2665. We will be back in a moment. You're listening to Education Matters.
Support comes from Virginia Neurology and Sleep Centers.
Hello, I'm Dr. Barot of Virginia Neurology and Sleep Centers, working to improve the health and wellness of those suffering from sleep issues in Hampton Roads. Sleep well, live well. More at vasleepneurology.com.
Support comes from the Virginia Living Museum, where the Spring Native Plant Sale continues, with plants to attract butterflies and more wildlife. 9 to 4:30, April 27th and 28th. More at thevlm.org.
We are back. I'm Doug Boynton. This is Education Matters, and it's WHRV's ongoing conversation around education in Eastern Virginia. We are talking today with Dr. Lisa Martin. She is superintendent of the Northampton County Schools. With questions or comments, if you have those, 800-940-2240 or 757-440-2665. Have things gotten back to normal from the pandemic?
I'm not sure that I would say that we're ever going to get back to normal, because we have a new normal now. And so the pandemic has truly changed how we conduct instruction, how we deliver instruction, and then looking at, as we continue to measure where we were and the state's continuing changing of the standards, we're looking at where we are and where we need to be. So we are not where we want to be, because we don't have 100% of our students being successful every day in every classroom, but we will be working towards doing that, and that's what's so important, is making sure those resources are in there. We've gone from instruction where we were not dependent on technology. We're now where we were during COVID-19, but that was the nice thing about COVID-19, is it allowed us to look at how can we incorporate technology into instruction, not just to be dependent upon it, but what can we do? So now we have a multitude of resources. Thank you, WHRO, for those resources as well, from our technology grants that we received from you. But now looking at, we've been able to go one-to-one, where we were not one-to-one before in grades 6 through 12. We're able to create mobile learning labs in 3 through 5 of our classrooms, so our students are able to not only get direct instruction, but then get onto the technology and move there. And then K through 2, we're looking at what can we do to have lab stations within, so students are able to rotate through that. But are we back to normal? No. Are there still learning gaps that we need to achieve? Absolutely, and we need to close.
Were there challenges in getting students back into the classroom?
There are, and there still continue to be, because again, it was one of those that there was a change in the culture where students got very comfortable at sitting at home. And now we need to get them back into the classroom for socialization. We need to get them back into the classroom where they become connected with each other and they become connected with the learning. Some of our students have left us and went on to employment before graduation. We need to bring them back in, because we need to ensure that every student that has an opportunity to get a high school diploma and make sure that those opportunities are available. So we need to look at different ways to do things.
It wasn't just academics, it was social skills too.
Absolutely. That was a great travesty of COVID-19, is our students may be connected with their phones and their personal communication devices, but we've never seen a more disconnected youth in terms of social skills, having conversations, interacting, even playing games together. We need to make sure that our students have those abilities and may be able to have conversations, may be able to have constructive disagreements without, resorting to other acts and other actions, but really being able to learn, to listen, and to guide themselves through the educational process.
Did the pandemic create problems for teachers as well?
I believe so, because for some of our staff members, the pandemic was that huge shift, because from one day you went from teaching in a classroom to the next day you were on technology, and your skills, it really challenged some of our veteran staff members. And what does it mean to teach some way completely different overnight? And so now it's trying to get back, and now they're redefining themselves again and looking at what are we going to do in terms of how do we take it from where we were in front of the classroom teaching, now we're behind the screen teaching, and how do we combine the two to make it the best of both worlds?
Was that a problem with retention?
It is, I think so, because I think some folks were maybe at a point of their careers where they were able to make a choice as to what do I want to do and how do I want to continue to redefine myself. But those teachers are absolutely wonderful, because they create a resource for us to bring back in as part-time, to bring back in as tutors, to bring back in as mentors for our new teachers that are learning the trade as we go up.
I want to talk about recruitment in a minute.
Okay.
We have a call. Let's go to Nathan from Suffolk, who has a question. Hi, Nathan. You're on the air.
Hello. Glad to hear this conversation, and congratulations to the new superintendent. I am Beaver Trails with Frederick Douglass, and I'm headed over to Northampton School Systems on Friday and Saturday. We're going to do performances over there of Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. so it's really good to hear something about the school system, and we're really grateful for the funding that's allowing this history to be told in the school system. So looking forward to meeting the students in Northampton County.
Thank you. Well, we're looking forward to having you there as well. So thank you for offering your skills and your trade and being a part of our educational experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Nathan. Regarding the pandemic and teaching and students recovering from that, I asked, are you completely recovered from that? And there still is a way to go. The pandemic money that came in, much of that was one-time money.
Correct.
And I know the governor was complaining that it wasn't being spent fast enough. And some districts took that money for continuing projects, and now they're having problems continuing the continuing projects. Where does Northampton stand there?
Well, we've used some of our money to bring our schools up to where they need it to be in terms of reaction to the COVID and looking at our HVAC systems and our safety and security and our health systems that were our air quality systems within our building. We've also using that money to look at our curriculum writing that's going on. We're looking at our curriculum work that needs to happen, and we're looking at what can we do to develop and build a viable curriculum moving forward once that money goes away. Again, we looked at that money to also provide some additional resources for our students and for our staff, and that's where we're also looking at what can we do within our budget to make sure that those resources remain even after the federal dollars are gone.
All the plans the state has and the federal government too to provide more internet service to rural communities, is that rolled out yet, and is it a help?
It definitely is a help for Northampton. We're not completely there yet, but we are. I think we're at approximately 80% of Northampton has that coverage now. But it's continuing to work with our internet providers out in the Northampton Accomack area. They are working together for us to ensure that our families have affordable internet across the shore.
What, as far as internet and teachers and their concerns during the pandemic, and especially coming out of the pandemic, how has recruitment gone?
Well, I think teacher recruitment is a national concern.
Yes.
It's not just a Northampton concern, but with us, it continues to be. We have to look at what can we do to market Northampton to ensure that we're attracting teachers and staff members that are going to want to be a part of the Northampton family. So we're looking at what can we do to ensure that we are bringing staff to that understand we are a rural community, but we have so much more to offer. It is a little piece of heaven. It's a slice of heaven, I guess is a better way to say it there, where the opportunity to truly integrate ecology, conservation, science into the lifelong curriculum that goes across with literacy and numeracy. So it really becomes a STEM-based program within our students. But again, we have the challenges of affordable housing. We also have the challenges of the lack of some of the amenities that many of our college students are still wanting to do. So one of the things that we put into place this past year is we put in a rideshare program. So where we may not have high-density housing over in Northampton County, we have a rideshare program where if you're living in that Virginia Beach area, in partnership with the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, where we're allowed to park our vans at the South Plaza. Staff can drive in there. They get into the vans. We bring them across to the Eastern Shore. They're dropped off at their school site, and they're able to work all day long and then go back. And our teachers are also participating, much like any other rideshare program, as part of drivers of the vans. So we're able to provide something a little bit different where other school divisions might not have that. But again, we recognize we have to compete and combat the challenges of the lack of housing that is in Northampton.
Our guest is Dr. Lisa Martin. She's the superintendent of Northampton County Schools. If you have a question or comment, our numbers are 800-940-2240 or 757-440-2665. Teachers leaving the profession and the lack of teachers coming into the profession, it's not just a matter of money, is it?
Well, everyone needs to have a true viable wage in terms of a living wage. We need to make sure that happens. The Eastern Shore, we are competing with Maryland, which offers a significantly higher rate of pay. We're also competing with Virginia Beach. And so we recognize that we do need to, because it is taken into consideration when someone's being offered their job, and they're being offered by multiple vendors or multiple school divisions, because again, it's a national shortage. And so we need to make sure that we are competitive with that. But it's also the other pieces that go along with it. It's the culture and the climate of the schools. It's the hometown feeling of the schools. It's being valued. It's opportunities to grow professionally. One of the things that we're looking to do is create a Grow Your Own program. So next year we're going to be starting working with our juniors and seniors within our high schools and offering courses for our students that are maybe interested in pursuing a degree in education. So we want to look at what can we do with dual enrollment opportunities through the community college, the Eastern Shore Community College, and then in partnership with the Eastern Shore Community College and Old Dominion University, see what we can do in terms of grant funding to ensure that our students that are interested in becoming educators, that they are able to not only get their associate's degree, but get their bachelor's degree, and then come back and teach on the shore with us and be a part. So truly growing our own teaching population. We're looking at our instructional assistants. What can we do for our instructional assistants to help grow them into a teaching position as well? And so again, not only just our high school students, but our current staff, and what can we do to help them get an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, all while working within our school classrooms and then turning them into teachers on the shore.
We touched on students who may not be speaking English at home,
Mm-hmm.
and that is some percentage of your student population.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage are we talking about here?
Well, it depends upon which school you're at and where
Right.
you are in the county. Countywide, we're at about 18%, but if we're up in the northern end of the county, it's significantly larger than it is in the south end of the county. But one of the things that we've put in is we recognize that regardless of where you're living at the moment, you may be moving to a different spot within Northampton, and so we want to make sure all of our schools are supported. So we've invested in additional resources. We now have a English as a second language teacher at each one of our 4 schools. We don't receive state funding so this was a commitment from out of our district budget in order to make this happen. But we have one that at each of our 4 schools that can work with staff, can work with students, that we can do pull out. We also have interpreters and translators in all of our schools as well. So again, if families come in where English may not be their first language, we're able to have someone on staff, on site, that can work with them and work with our teachers and helping for our parents become a part of the educational process. We've also, with our literacy program this year, our All District Reads program, we've ensured that our books that we're selecting across the year are in dual language. So they're in English and in Spanish. And we do our videotapings of each of the chapters in both languages as well. So I may not read English in my home, but it's one of those that I can still participate in and reinforce the importance of learning to read, and I can be a part of my child's education.
Heather is standing by on the line. Heather, hi, you're on the air.
Hi there. I am a teacher in another district locally, and I have 2 questions for you regarding your technology usage. The first one is, how do you decide which technology to use? Because so much of it is just glitter wrap, stuff that kids get bored with very quickly. And second, have you looked at any of the studies regarding Bill Gates' foundation in New York City and his educational not successes?
So let me go with your first question. I think that is talking about how do we make decisions about what technology we use. We work with our technology department. We work with our instructional department. We work with teams of our teachers and looking at what can we do in terms of incorporation of technology into it. I absolutely agree that if it's just technology for technology's sake, students do get bored with it. It's got to be something that's integrated, and it's got to be something that's engaging, learning. It's got to be something that is relevant to the learning that is happening. One of the things that we're looking at is with our incorporation of our Discovery Ed tech books in the area of science, for example, where our students are actually able to do lessons and experimentation along with their FOSS materials, but also be able to do it using technology along that line. In terms of the Bill Gates study, I'm not sure I'm familiar with what study you're referencing, but I do try to stay current on the research as much as possible.
Very good. He had several tryouts in the education world, and he wanted very much to make a system that we could just keep kids more on computers and entertain more data that way. And they failed miserably in New York when I was there. So, but now I'm in another district, and I'm watching the same buildup of the same technologies without Gates' name on it, and watching students who were doing really very well are now faltering and failing.
Well, I will share with you, I've not been, we're not a big fan of necessarily the virtual learning days, because we recognize that too often those virtual learning days, without that interaction, that students are, they're not growing and they're not moving forward. And so we want to make sure that we're using technology to support and enhance, but not to replace instruction. And so that's where our emphasis has been in Northampton.
Thanks for the call, Heather. She talked about a program that she believes, I'm not familiar with it either, but clearly she believed it was a failure. But I think we're all trying different things as we come out of the pandemic, and not everything is going to work.
Absolutely, and that's when I made my reference to what is our new normal now, because we're still trying to figure out what is working, what is not working, what can we do. But we do recognize that when we were in COVID, that virtual learning by itself is not a panacea for all students. Not all students have that energy and or that desire to learn in that fashion. So we need to make sure that we provide opportunities across the continuum for all of our students based on their need and based on their want, and what can we do to ensure that technology is not going away. So what are we going to do different with it? And that's the big piece there, is how are we going to incorporate it in, and how are we going to make sure that our students leave us with a skill set for jobs that haven't even been imagined yet.
You were in charge of quality when you worked for the state board? I
worked in the Virginia Department of Education in the Office of School Quality, yes, sir.
What tools did that arm you with as you came into Northampton?
Well, it armed me with several different, because I was very fortunate to work with several different school divisions across the state. The Office of School Quality works not only with schools that are being successful, but we also work with schools that are meeting with challenges. So I was able to have conversations with a number of superintendents, a number of school leaders, and to look at what are they doing and what is working for them, and what can we be duplicated across other divisions. The other piece that it brought to me was the importance of planning. Things don't happen without a plan, and with that plan, you need to ensure you look for what are those unintended consequences that go along with it, and what are the resources that you need, what is the professional development that needs to occur, what is the intent of the plan to begin with, and what is the goal in mind that you want to accomplish. And so it's really looking at what do we need to do to plan in order to be successful as we move forward.
Our guest is Dr. Lisa Martin. She is the superintendent of the Northampton County Schools. Your questions and comments are welcome at 800-940-2240 or 757-440-2665. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to Education Matters on WHRV.
Support comes from Virginia Stage Company. I'm producing artistic director Tom Quaintance. Join us for the soul-stirring Blues for an Alabama Sky, set in Harlem in the 1930s, where the blues are getting bluer and the gin is running dry. April 17th through May 5th. Tickets at vastage.org.
Get a better night's sleep with The Dream Conductor, a free new sleep podcast series from WHRO Public Media. Each 30-minute episode of The Dream Conductor lulls you to rest with whimsical stories of beloved classical composers, set against their coziest classical melodies. The Dream Conductor Sleep Podcast Series. Free for download now at whro.org/dreamconductor or wherever you find your podcasts.
And we're back. It's Education Matters on WHRV, and our guest is Dr. Lisa Martin, the superintendent of the Northampton County Schools. Ground was broken, the silver shovels were out, and the new high school and middle school is beginning construction. But that was a long process.
It was a long process. Part of the process, again, COVID happened, and COVID interrupted the process as we were trying to plan and move forward. COVID also impacted the supply chain. And so with the supply chain, when the bids were coming in, bids were much higher than what we had hoped for. We were very fortunate that we were able to write a construction grant through the Virginia Department of Education for the high school project, and we were able to receive some funding that were able to offset some of those costs along with it. But again, as I shared earlier in this broadcast, very, very blessed to have the support of a wonderful community and that recognizes the importance of education and the opportunities that our students need and should have in Northampton. And so we were one of the earlier divisions that were able to execute a 1-cent sales tax and commit that sales tax to construction. So we were able to look at some of that funding that went along with it. Our Board of Supervisors, I can't speak any higher of them. They are just been phenomenal to work with. One part of it is we've included them in the process. We have what we've referred to as the School Enhancement Committee, which we have Board of Supervisors members, we have school board members, we have central office staff along with it, as well as the county manager and the finance director, where we get together and we work and we meet almost on a weekly basis regarding the status of the construction, as well as when we were planning and reviewing bids that went along the way.
There was a referendum on that?
There was, yes, sir.
So the voters
came out and they supported it. Yes, sir.
Okay. What kinds of things will the new school have?
Well, we are looking at with the new school, we're looking at updated facilities. We have a section in there that was actually built in 1954. And so we recognize that with that, we're going to need some upgrades to our building. We just this August, we were fortunate through the foundation to get a STEM lab. However, when we had to look at where we were plugging the STEM lab in, we were blowing circuits. So again, from going from 1954 and what electrical work was required then and what's looking at what our equipment requires now, that's going to be a huge piece. It's also going to look at additional classroom spaces. It's going to provide us with an updated auditorium. It's going to look at updated gymnasium that's going to allow us to really host our students in a facility that is modernized and is going to meet their needs going forward.
Our numbers, if you have questions or comments, 800-940-2240 or 757-440-2665. Let's go to Amy in Suffolk. You're on the air.
Hi. I am calling because I have a specific situation for my student that I found out is actually a general situation for lots of kids. My daughter was in 8th grade during the pandemic in 2020, and she took some high school level classes that she did not do well in at all. She has since had all A's and B's throughout high school. She is now in 11th grade and has never had anything less than a B. But those old grades from 8th grade never got dropped, even though there is a provision in the Department of Education law that says that they can be. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it was 2020, and the form, which I have a copy of, never got registered with the state. And I found out that a lot of students had to fill in this form and turn it in at a time when they weren't allowed to actually go to the schools to turn in the forms. So a lot of students may be struggling with a lower GPA because they couldn't turn in a form rather than having our state say, well, these are grades that should be dropped anyway, let's drop the grades rather than force a parent to have to figure out how to get a form into the school to be able to drop the grades that obviously no one wants to keep. So I was wondering if your guest has any insight as to what can be done specifically for my daughter and in general for other students who are having this same issue reflected on their GPA.
Well, I would encourage you to go back, talk to your school's, your daughter's principal, and look at, and through their guidance office, and look at what can happen. So I'd start there, what can happen at the school level. Then I would, if that's not a viable option, then move it up through your chain of command within your school division, through the central office, and even as far as the superintendent. I am familiar with the rule that you're talking about, and the rule does require a notification and parent signature for those courses to be dropped. However, I also recognize that COVID changed the rules for all of us for that period of time. And so again, I would encourage you, start at the building level, work with your principal, and then look at what you can do moving forward with that sense.
Thanks for the call, Amy. The question I had about staff, it's not just teachers that there's a shortage of, right? I mean, everything from food service to bus drivers to...
You are so on point with that one as well. We face, as many other school divisions in our region, bus driver shortages. And we recognize that. And bus driving is a job that is a challenging job. And we recognize that, and we honor our bus drivers. And so we recognize with a group of students and trying to get them home and get them to school on time that we need to make sure that we honor them. But yes, we are looking for bus drivers. We're looking for bus monitors. We are looking for cafeteria workers. And we go to as many job fairs as we possibly can to recruit for those positions as well.
I mean, the four schools total for the whole county. Those are some long bus routes.
In many instances, our students are on the ride for over an hour. And so we try to schedule in about an hour between, because of our bus shortage and our bus driver shortage, we do double runs. And so, or our high school gets out earlier, they may be also doing an elementary run. And currently we're having some overlap of time because, again, I'll refer to it as the long fingers, the long necks, that they're the little 2-lane roads that we're going back and turning around. And some of our bus drivers, that if there's weather conditions, if there are we've had some rain, where we may have some flooding on the areas, we're having to reroute. Some of those rides get even longer for that sense as well.
Rain and flooding and fog and how many days a year do you lose?
Well, we've lost 5 days at this point in time. Never have I ever had a fog day until I came to Northampton. Being in Northern Virginia, we had several snow days, we've had ice days, but now I've learned what fog days. And again, it truly is. We want to make sure that our students that are driving, as well as our bus drivers, have the best opportunity to see what is on the road in front of them and can be as safe as when they are driving those vehicles.
Let's go back to the phones. Dee from Virginia Beach. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, I've been listening to your show. I'm just wondering what your take is on extra tasks that teachers have to take on. I have 3 teachers in my family, and they're always need to do, like, one day there was 80 phone calls, and they have to do testing. They lose their planning bells. They have hall duty, and to write certain passes, they have to go into the computer, and they'll lose that information. Then they got to go in. It's like a very antiquated system, and they're losing information. They have to do the grading and phone calling and all that. So how do teachers fit that in their day when they don't have?
Well, one of the things that, again, for our elementary school teachers, one of the things that we recognize is we try to ensure that they have that unencumbered planning, as well as when there's time when their students are at on-course. Unfortunately for us, we don't have any of our elementary schools that have teachers that have that large of a number. Many of our elementary classrooms are 20 or below. So they're working primarily with those students within that class in order to ensure grading is part of the process. And so we looking at next year, we, based on teachers' request, we are building in teacher work days within our calendar as well, so that when that grading comes up, that they have an unencumbered work day, that we're not stealing for professional development, but they have a day that they can truly work on some of their tasks. When we had the eclipse day, we went on a shortened day. The afternoon became a work time. So we're trying to honor and value the work time experience that they have. For our middle schools and our high schools, because we are on an alternating block day and our periods, they have a significantly longer planning time than our elementary teachers do. And so they're able to have a planning period every day, and that allows them opportunities for to make those phone calls as necessary to ensure that if grades need to be taken care of. But again, it's one of those that I recognize that with that lesson plans, we have common planning in our middle schools and our high schools, as well as so that we can work on what can we do for common planning, ensure that those teachers are able to do what they need to do within much of their day. But we recognize that teaching in itself doesn't just stay within those 8-hour days, that there's work and assignments that go on beyond.
Thanks for the call. Thank you, Dee. Not every career path goes through college.
Correct.
Skilled trades are in desperate need. We had stories just this week about shipbuilding, and the Navy is behind on its shipbuilding because they can't find enough skilled tradespeople. Have you got cooperative programs with businesses in the county?
We are working on that. That was one of the things when I first came into this position. I hired a coordinator for work-based learning, and that is part of what his job is. He has been charged with is what can we do to develop opportunities for our students. We're working with Eastern Shore Community College on our welding program. We've also have within our high school, we have a carpentry program where we're looking to move to building trades in order to expand that out, so it's not just carpentry, but looking at HVAC and looking at the electricity and other components within the building trades. We have auto mechanics that we're looking at what can we do to ensure that our students have those opportunities and exposure for those pieces as well, because we recognize that not everyone may be going to college right out of high school.
Right.
But they may be needing to go to work in order. But even if they do, they need to have a skill that they can also earn money on to help pay for those college loans, because college costs are going up significantly every year. The other piece that we want to do is we want to work with Wallops and NASA and look at what are those skills that those business world, those contractors are needing out of our students as well. What we're looking at potentially adding in a GIS program where we're looking at drones, and we're not only looking at unmanned drones on the land, we're looking at air, and we're looking in the aqua and the water as well. So what can we do? We added a MATE program in our middle school and high school club program this year, because we're looking at underwater drones exploration and see what we can do to spur that interest and pique those interests in our students, so that we can continue to look down the road as to what are those trades that we need in order to ensure that the Eastern Shore continues to hustle and bustle and be viable.
So if I'm a student and I'm about to graduate from college,
yes,
and I have my teaching certificate, sell me on why I should come to Northampton.
Well, you don't even need a teaching certificate, because we're going to help you get that when you come to Northampton. Because you're going to come to Northampton, you're going to find that there is not a more beautiful place, and I'm going to challenge my friends that up in the mountains, but there's not a more beautiful place in Virginia and even down in North Carolina than the Eastern Shore. You have water, there's 4 miles across on the land, you have the bay on one side, you have the Atlantic on the other, you have all of the amenities that go along with. You have truly hometown experiences where your neighbors know who you are. Your neighbors come out, and when something's happening, we just had in our family, my other half just had shoulder surgery. My neighbor came out and saw me. Next, I got home from work, my lawn's mowed for me. So it's one of those, you don't get that in Northern Virginia. You don't even know who your neighbors' names are. They are here. You're vested in this community. They appreciate who you are in this community, and we're vested in our teachers to continue to grow them as professionals and look at opportunities. And you have small class sizes, and that's the beauty of it. You're not having a classroom of 30 or 35. You're looking at a classroom of 15 to 20 where you get to know each one of your students individually by name and by need, and you're able to make sure that you're able to teach and to see the energy and the excitement as our students learn.
It's a small district.
Yes.
1,400 roughly students in K through 12.
K through 12.
But you have the same successes, failures, challenges as any big district.
Absolutely.
And you've been in big districts too.
I absolutely have, and you're absolutely correct. We have the same challenges. The difference with a small division is we wear multiple hats. There is when I came into this position last year, I was the HR director, I was the finance director, and I was the associate superintendent for curriculum instruction and the superintendent until I was able to build a team as we were moving forward, because we had vacancies even before I came in as the associate superintendent. So again, we're aware we don't get to necessarily give one task to someone and say, go do. We are multitasking in everything that we do. And so that means that we need folks that are willing to multitask with us, that are willing to put in the time and the energy that goes along with us, because we're all committed. Just like in a big district, we are all committed for the welfare of our students.
Is the district where you want it to be right now?
Not yet.
What's on the to-do list?
Oh, on the to-do list, we've got to get a new high school built. We've got to get a new middle school built. We've got to get a CTE program that is just more current and up-to-date and enhancing in opportunities for our students. We need to involve in workplace learning, internships, mentorships, apprenticeships that we can do for our students so they walk out of our schools with the skills that they need to be employable, that they can be they can walk into the military and be in a position there whether they're enlisted, and they can go on and they can enroll in a college or university or a trade school. So I'm looking at my 3 E's of being, what are we going to do to ensure that our students are ready for the next step of their life and their challenge? And that means we've got to focus on the basics. We've got to focus on the reading, writing, the arithmetic. We've got to focus on the science and the history. We've got to make sure that our curriculum is there for our students, that it's engaging, that it's inviting, that it's enriching, and that it's exciting for our students to do all that they need to do, and that we can keep them in school in order for them to be successful when they graduate from school.
Thank you for spending an hour with us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so very, very much for having me.
Our guest is Dr. Lisa Martin, Superintendent of the Northampton County Schools. You can find out more about the Northampton County Schools at ncpsk12.com. Northampton County Schools, we should mention, are stakeholders in Heretta. Heretta holds the license for the WHRO stations. Today's program was produced by Dr. Barry Graham. Our audio engineer is Jordan Christie. Danielle Saunders answered the phones. Our theme music is an original composition by Todd Washburn. Thank you to WHRO CEO Bert Schmidt, Chief Content Officer Heather Mazzoni, Senior Director Audio Content and Audience Strategy Chuck Dowd, and Operations Manager Jeff Sander. The show is on demand at WHRV.org. Our next show scheduled for July. I'm Doug Boynton, and remember, education matters to everyone. Thank you.